Okay, and welcome to a new video on the channel. It's been a really long time, and there's going to be another one after this, mainly focusing on the geology, geophysics, everything to do with Scallywag that I can find, and how it relates to other things. Well, but that's not going to come out yet because that's going to take a lot more time. This video is going to be on just my thoughts about today's RNS, the price drop, what happens on the bulletin board, all of that stuff, the sort of generic things, just to get my thoughts out there. And maybe these thoughts will calm some people. I don't know how it's going to kind of go down, but I just wanted to put something out there rather than doing this big long video and waiting a long time. Okay, so this is a video specifically dedicated to the Scallywag RNS. I'm probably going to leave this up for a week, and then I will take it down because there's no point leaving this on the channel because it's going to get outdated pretty quick. Either way, I'm going to begin with a presentation kind of going over a bit about Scallywag's RNS and geology. I'm then going to show you a chart which I have kind of showing what's happening with the Scallywag, the Great and Gold price, and then finishing off with my final thoughts. Obviously, disclaimer, I own shares, I'm not a financial advisor, all the usual stuff applies for when this comes to it. Do your own research, don't take my opinions and what I say in this video as investment advice, because it could be nonsense, okay? Anyway, moving on. So what I'm going to show you is just a few Scallywag maps first. Obviously on the left, we have a magnetic map. Regional magnetic map covers a large area. These big sort of red peaks are sort of mainly picking up granites in the area, like the Mount Crofton granite. You can find more details on the granites in a previous presentation, my second one. I will also talk extensively about the granites in the next presentation as well, so you can also wait for that. The black dots are showing you the various mineral occurrences or sites that GGP have. So Havieron, the main one on the right, Scallywag is here. And zooming in on Scallywag, we can see this on the magnetics image. We've got several targets, London, Kraken, Blackbeard, and a new one they've announced called Teach. And obviously they've reported the results for 3 holes from London and Kraken and Blackbeard today. They've still got 4 more to announce, but we're going to talk about the 3 they've announced today, what it means, and essentially what I think about the share price drop. Some more maps just kind of showing you why they targeted these specific areas. So as you can see on the previous map, you've got these sort of classic bullseye anomaly targets. Kraken, similar to Havieron, where it's white, then red, then green. But then off of that, using the gravity, you can see there's a gravity low here, which is interpreted to be a granitic intrusion. But within that, you've got these sort of high spots which represent these high values. And I think actually this specifically is interpreted, these are actually the IP anomalies that have been overprinted onto this specific graph, okay? And these IP induced polarization, it stands for. It's thought that when you get a peak in that, it's a magnetic presence in the subsurface, which can often either be some form of intrusion, maybe if you're going shallow enough water, but sometimes it's considered to be ore bodies. So they specifically were targeting these IP anomalies sort of in and amongst Kraken and London. Okay, that's what they were doing. In terms of regional geology, this is a map from Artemis Resource. It's quite a good one that's been published in the public domain, where we have basically Havieron's over here, but on the other side of this interpreted thrust fault, we've got a syncline. It was originally reported as an antiform in 2019 by Great and Gold, but basically the Scallywag syncline is here. The magnetic rock units, they call it, that's going to be the Punta Punta Formation and the Wilkie Formation, which is part of the Lamel group. Okay, I'm going to get into that in a minute. And yeah, it's basically those rocks have been folded into this quite tight structure. And that's basically the same geology that you see at Havieron that hosts the mineralisation there, and the Lamel group specifically hosts the mineralisation at Telfer as well. So it's quite clear you want to be targeting these specific rock units if you're going to find any gold or copper. So back to the Lamel group. This is just something from a previous presentation I've done. The top of it is the Wilkie Formation. The middle is the Punta Punta, which is the host to Havieron. Bottom is the Malu Formation, which is the host to Telfer. And the whole thing is part of the Yanina supergroup. So if you see these terms bandied about, that's basically what this all means. We call this sequence a regressive sequence because basically from the bottom to the top, the deposits represent a change in environment from basically marine conditions, so like basically in an ocean, to more deposits and sediments that are forming on land, terrestrial sediments. So the Wilkie Formation is basically material that's been deposited either on a sort of like a sandy coastline, upwards even as high, sort of further inland as a desert. The Punta Punta is more shallow marine, you get a lot more carbonate as a result, and the Malu quartzites at the bottom are kind of a mix of shallow marine to sort of Sabkha facies conditions where you're kind of drying out, you get a little bit of evaporite, I believe, in here. But then there are some deeper marine deposits as well at the very, very bottom. And this is another previous diagram I created in the former presentation where it brings into some geological events, specifically these orogenies, these mountain building episodes, and also putting on where the granites are coming in, which is between 650 and 605. Very brief explanation. Basically, the Punta Punta Formation is hosting the mineralisation at Havieron and probably going to host a lot of the mineralisation, if present, at Scallywag. The O'Callaghan's granites intrude much of this stratigraphy. The granites are basically exsolving fluids, and with that, metals. The pressure of those hydrothermal fluids is creating brecciation, and it's creating reactions with the host stratigraphy that eventually will form in what we call intrusion-related gold deposits. And this process is in conjunction with the breakup or the collapse, it's a process known as orogenic collapse, with the Miles orogeny. So after we form the mountain belt, basically the mountain belt will start to erode, it will start to kind of undergo extension, and that creates accommodation space. It creates essentially faults and fracture and pathways for hydrothermal fluids to exploit, which ultimately, with the right conditions, will lead to copper and gold mineralization, which is what they've managed to identify at Havieron and they want to find elsewhere. And as a result, many other companies such as Wishbone Gold and Gunsynd have got investment in Rincon Resources. We've got Rio Tinto in the north with the Wino deposit. We've got Artemis, Antipa in the area. I'm probably forgetting some others. There's been a massive rush to this area because of the Havieron discovery. So Great and Gold have really led the way in this area along with Newcrest Mining. So what was in the Scallywag RNS then? So Scallywag, they basically describe what they've done, which is to test those IP anomalies around the Scallywag syncline. They explain the syncline folds, the Punta Punta and Wilkie. So as I said, we're up here again, so we're in the right geology, we're in the right sort of time frame. They give you some information about the drill holes. There were 7 in total. 4 are still in the lab because there was a big backlog due to COVID-19 creating delays. Lots and lots of exploration going on in Australia at the moment and elsewhere. So the labs are very, very busy, and eventually, so I think one of the big reasons for the drop today, I think there's been so much anticipation because of the delay, and we're expecting good results. There was basically an expectation that the results are going to be good based on past performance of the company with Havieron. Maybe some because of the delay, why would they hold back bad news? We don't know when they may have got these samples a few days ago and they've just released it straight away. But basically there was this expectation because of how long it's been since they announced their drilling and that they got their samples into the labs. How long it's been, the results could not possibly be bad. But that's the problem. Straight away, it's caught a lot of people by surprise. Obviously, market as well as institutions obviously did not expect that to be so bad, because we'll get onto why it's pretty bad, like in terms of the grade, which I think people were expecting Havieron-esque results, and it's created a shock. And the thing is, we have to realise is that Scallywag is early exploration. When you look, if you know anything about, like, for example, the Lassonde curve, Scallywag is pretty much near the start of it. Okay, so this is where there are going to be bumps along the way. It's worth mentioning that Great and Gold is quite unique in the sense that their major resource that they've been drilling, Havieron, they have not had a bad result. Not once have they announced a single negative, poor intercept, because they were lucky enough to drill through pretty much the centre of the ore system. When you actually look at the data, and I didn't include it in this presentation, I'll maybe include it in the next one. When you take a look at the data that's not within the crescent zone and the centre of the ore deposit, and you start looking at sort of the outer rims of the drill holes that are on the outer rim, the grades are lower. The results that they get are less economic, because that's starting to get into what is known as the alteration zone. And that is what I believe that they have managed to drill through at London and at Kraken, and a bit at Blackbeard as well. And we'll get onto that now. So, at London, we had a 575 metre drill hole. They actually only intersect the Wilkie Formation. They don't intersect the Punta Punta, which is the host to Havieron. We get a few thin quartz veins with disseminated pyrite, no reported ore minerals like, for example, chalcopyrite or even some of these, for example, pyrrhotite, which we see at Havieron. None of that. It's just quartz veins with disseminated pyrite. And in and amongst that, we have some basically alteration halos around that. So basically, I think they report hematite alteration halos. So you get a bit of basically iron based alteration. Either way, in these specific examples, we have a peak of 0.25 gram per ton gold over 1 metre, and that is the best intercept that was present at any of these sites. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, that is pathetic. There is probably more gold in some people's teeth than that. Put it this way, in my opinion, if you're getting that result in any, just 3 of these drill holes, I'm not really expecting much from the other 4. So this area, these sets of drill holes, it doesn't look like this specific area is going to be particularly favourable for a major discovery. However, we do get a lot of pathfinder elements. We get a peak in arsenic in the Kraken hole as well, which they don't show in these tables, but that often accompanies gold. But we get a lot more bismuth, lead, some zinc, basically some base metals that are coming along with some of these with these samples, and some of these and including the granite sill, which is the first example actually of a granite that has been drilled through, from what I can see, at any of the sites. There's a lot of speculation. It's not speculation, but the model formation is that we have a granite at depth that is basically supplying the fluids alongside some pre-existing fluids, perhaps, to form these intrusion-related golds. But apart from a seismic section from Artemis, there actually is, and the fact that there is regional granites elsewhere in the Patterson. The actual presence of granite this is the first time we've actually got it in a drill hole. So to me, this is now proof that there is definitely a granite sort of underlying the system around Havieron and in the Patterson that could be generating these potential ore deposits. This specific granite, however, this granite still does not look to be mineralized, and I'll speculate on some reasons why in a future video on the geology. I don't really want to get into it here. Either way, we do have these pathfinder elements, and these pathfinder elements specifically are quite commonly associated with alteration around intrusion-related gold deposits. There's been numerous studies done by researchers on deposits in America, in Canada, also in Australia as well, in Queensland, that show that in the alteration zones that are located around some of these deposits, we do get enrichments in things like bismuth and zinc and copper. And essentially what would normally happen if you find an alteration zone is that you want to then start to sort of use those sort of numbers to start to try and find which direction the center of the ore system is in. This is a process known as vectoring. So we've got some values here for London and Kraken, and I'll show you those in a minute for Kraken and Blackbeard. And we can start to figure out, right, it looks as if we're on the periphery of a possible gold deposit, okay? We're on the periphery, we're on the outer alteration zones, whether that's with respect to the depth of the drill hole. Because, for example, here at London, we're only going through the Wilkie Formation, we're not going through the Punta Punta yet, which is where the Havieron is. So there's a suggestion that really these drill holes need to be, possibly double in length, okay? Which obviously will have impact on the economics of the ore deposit, but either way, you need to drill maybe a bit deeper. But also in terms of the location on the surface where you're actually drilling, you could be on the periphery. So if you're doing that, you need to move closer to the center of the order system, and to do that you're going to have to drill more. You're going to have to drill in different areas and start to see whether or not these values are going to be changing. That is what normally happens in an exploration campaign. It's very rare you get the center, the bullseye straight away like a Havieron. So for those who have not been invested in mining for very long or aren't familiar with the mining process, this is not completely uncommon. It's not what you want to see. Right? So this is why when you've got early exploration companies, you want to make sure they're funded. If they're funded, then bad results are not too bad. Because, if you're not funded, you've got one chance. You have a certain amount of money you may have raised from the market, and you've got one or two chances to go and get a result. And if your money runs out, that's it. Company folds or has to go back to the market with bigger dilution. The thing with Greatland Gold is that much of this exploration, thanks to the share price rise, thanks to Newcrest joint ventures and some placings in the past, there's money in the company to be able to continue to drill in these areas. They're pretty much fully funded for the entire year, also including Patterson Range East. So they have more opportunities to be able to go and drill other places, such as the new target called Teach, where essentially they may eventually stumble upon a result. We can't know that for sure, but this is the game of exploration. You win some and you lose some, okay? And in this case, they've lost some. Moving on to Kraken. Kraken, if we go back actually to the chart, Kraken is located at the fold closure of the hinge, basically the hinge zone of the syncline, okay? So if we go back to Kraken, they don't actually, you get no Wilkie Formation there, you only get Punta Punta, because the Wilkie Formation will be located further north. Because it's a syncline, further south. In a syncline, so in an anticline, you fold the rocks, and the oldest rocks are in the core. They're in the core of the fold. If you then do a syncline, the older rocks are actually on the outside of the it's still in the core of it's basically on the outside of the fold. Okay, you can Google some pictures of this, and I've explained this, I'm pretty sure, in a previous presentation. But either way, the point is that where they've drilled, they don't get any Wilkie Formation, they don't get any granite steel, they only get the Punta Punta, and we get some more consistent readings here, some more consistent anomalous results in the Punta Punta. So to me, and this is just how I see it, I really don't think any hole that only gets the Wilkie Formation is going to be very prospective. I think at all times the drill hole must go through the Punta Punta, because that appears to be the major host rock to the mineralization, at least in this part of the Patterson. Okay. Blackbeard, it only went through the Wilkie, and again, no significant sulfides reported. We get a few anomalous results, such as this copper anomalies here from 461 down to 518. That's kind of worth investigating, but we don't really get any gold readings. We don't get much in silver. To me, it just feels like the Wilkie Formation is barren, and that the Punta Punta and the Malu Formation, which are proven host rocks to Havieron and Telfer, should be the targets. I think exploring and finding anything in the Wilkie, I think, will be rather anomalous. And I don't believe the Wilkie, perhaps due to its own individual properties, is a suitable host rock for the ore here. So, some other positives I want to kind of touch upon. We have several new targets that they have defined based on the new aeroelectromagnetic survey that was flown, where we've picked out these sort of targets here that are given A numbers and one that's been labelled SWAN. And there's no doubt that they'll go and target those with extra drilling. Teach I've already kind of shown on a previous diagram as another basically anomaly that's similar to the other, but is more along strike downwards towards the south. I've said before, the alteration is similar to other intrusion-related gold deposits worldwide, and as a result, it's not completely out of the question that Scallywag may contain a good intrusion-related deposit. I think the key, as I've tried to emphasise, is that one really bad result doesn't incriminate a company. What you have to remember, and this is another point, Newcrest Mining owned Havieron years and years ago, and they drilled it, and they found nothing because they didn't drill deep enough. They didn't get through the cover. And even when they did have some holes that they went through the cover, the intercepts were not mind-blowing like they are at the moment because they were not drilling in the right zone. And that was based on their choices, what data they were using for their geophysics. In my opinion, the bottom line is, for these first 3 holes, they've not drilled in the right place. And that's the way it goes in exploration sometimes. We have other projects outside of Scally that are yet to be drilled. From March 2021 onwards, we're going to be focusing on Patterson Range East and also Black Hills, which is in joint venture with Newcrest. So again, that's pretty much fully funded. And if you get any good result out of that, that's going to be very good. That actually is also because there's been historical work done there. And some of the rocks are much more present at the surface, such as the granites. The exploration now, I would argue, is actually a bit easier than where Scallywag is and Havieron, because that is completely desert, barren. You get nothing at the surface that can help you. And the other point I want to make is that Beerenberg's broker target at 33 pence was pretty much based entirely on Havieron and not Scallywag. When you go and read it, and I'll show you the report of that actually, I'm going to go and show you the report of that. So if we go here and we go to this article here on Proactive, they basically explain throughout the entirety of this piece that their target, they expect a deposit of 12.5 million ounces because the 4.2 million ounce mineral resource estimate, which no doubt will get upgraded over time, right, was exceeding their expectations of 3.75. Okay. And then they, with a bunch of calculations, because I don't have access to the Beerenberg report, I can't say what all the assumptions are. But they assume an enterprise value per reserve ounce of $696. Mainly, I guess you could call that all-in sustaining cost. With the current gold price, they believe that the returns from that with the shares outstanding will be 33 pence a share. And that's entirely based on the Havieron. That's not based on Scallywag. Right, so where we was at 37p was already overshot. So we were probably due for a little bit of a correction. But this correction that went down to 25 pence, in my opinion, and it's the opinion of Gervais Hill, it's the opinion of multiple people on the bulletin board, it's the opinion of my geological friends, was a major, major overreaction. And to provide further weighting to that, I will show you the chart. I will show you the chart currently on TradingView. This is the daily chart. This is the drop today. We've had a huge volume where we had this big dive down pretty much as low as 24 pence. But look what happens. We have a big rejection candle. Big rejection candle. Because there's demand here. As soon as it went down to this price, people were like, I'm having some of that. You know, buying at 24s, 25, 26 pences. You know, buying this basically huge dip up. Okay, now some of these people may be short-term traders and maybe cashing out tomorrow would be a good thing for them because they got 10 to 20%. So there could be a little dip, a little bit more of a dip tomorrow. Maybe some people didn't sell today. But by the time the dust settles, looking at this big rejection candle, the fact that it's in previous alignment with resistance over here suggests that the real bottom of this dip based on this result is 25 pence. Now, if you take the fact that up until the highest point we reached was around about 38, 37 pence, and this run that we've been on pretty much from the get-go, from Jan 20th, has been almost entirely driven by the Haveron announcements. I would argue 80 to possibly even as much as 90% of the share price is based on Haveron, right? A drop of over from pretty much here, well, in fact, we'll be more conservative, from 34 pence down to a value of, 24 to 25 pence, which is, around about 25 to 30% drop. That is in stark contrast with the value of that. Basically overweights Scallywag as a portion of the share price. So that drop for me is completely out of sync with how much Scallywag should be worth in this entire run. So if you knew that and you were confident of that, buying this dip today has already proved profitable. There were multiple people on the bulletin board, and I'm going to name them: Arnold Palmer, Elise 20, and a few others, going mental and laughing at everybody for this drop, goading people and saying, oh, this price is going to go to the 20s. And I've seen previous posts from these people, wanting this share price to drop so they can get back in. So it would stand to reason that surely they bought this dip. Surely they bought it because they know they clearly were waiting for this. And if they haven't bought it, then, well, it pretty much exposes them for being serial derampers, and that's their only goal. And I was absolutely appalled by some of the vulgar comments that were being spouted by those two posters and others. I think one was called might be someone called Luke D. Green, was calling out Paddy Gould because he sold him down the river. Disgraceful comments. If you insult somebody else for your own investment decision, because ultimately you're the only person who can buy a stock, no one has a gun to your head, and you're going to whinge and moan because you bought in over here and it's gone down because you didn't do your own due diligence. Well, then I'm sorry, you've just been stupid. If you lose money in the stock market like this, right, you only have yourself to blame. Okay, if you bought in here, and I'm sorry if this offends people, but this is the way it is. If you bought in here, right, because you've seen this big rise, you fear of missing out, or even if you bought in here and you thought, the fundamentals of Haveron, etc., blah, 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 means that the share price should be worth 50p, whatever the reason you bought in here is at, and you've seen this drop and you're getting angry, right, you don't belong in the stock market. You're gambling. Any logical investor that bought in up here and had done their homework and was confident and was reassured in their own investment thesis that the price could go higher, then this represents one of the bargains of the century. If the share price goes down 30% from where you bought and you thought it was fair value, you should be scrambling as much as possible to go and get as much more money as you can to go and buy the thing. Okay, that is what investing is. If nothing has changed, if you're still confident based on that, and maybe Scallywag was a little bit of that, you maybe sell a little bit, you wouldn't have panic sold. You wouldn't have done that. Okay? You wouldn't have been screaming and shouting from the hilltops about how bad this drop is, etc. You would have, if you buy something at 35 pence, if you buy something at 35 pence, and you were confident it was going to go to, say, 50 pence, and then something that makes up only, say, 10% of that decision causes a drop of, 30%, and you're 30% down, surely you would buy more. That's if you're going for a value investing approach, the shares are on sale. That's just my perspective anyway. That's not investment advice to go and buy. I'm just ranting and raving at the people that, essentially were calling out people like Paddy Gould, who have produced more research on this share than pretty much 99.99% of even analysts out there on the companies. You're a disgrace if you're criticising that man. Okay? You're a disgrace if you criticise anyone else, like Hydrogen or BAMS21 or anyone else like that. Okay? I've probably been called out myself. I didn't see anything, but if I have, my email is magictrades212@gmail.com. If you want to go and write a complaint, contact me there. I don't care. Okay, I'll tell you where to go, because ultimately nobody has any control over whether you buy or sell something. Only you can press that button. Blaming somebody else for your poor decision making is just passing the buck, and you will never make money in the stock market doing that. Okay, rant over. Anyway, point is, bottoms in at, I think, 25 pence. So based on this sort of overreaction, we could see a knee-jerk reaction to the top side. We may get a little bit of drop. We may even go for a retest of 25, but I would be winning. I've been quite confident that this area here is quite a strong demand area. And any positive news on the future assay results, which could still happen, I don't think they will be good, but if they are good, we may get a bigger spike up to the upside. We've got Patterson Range East and the drilling to commence in March 2021. We also have more Havieron results coming out across the year, progressing to the pre-feasibility study. So there is still things that can push the share price back up to here, even if it was only to go to 36s and was break even for some people, right? Here is not fair value for Greatland Gold, in my view. But going back then, so final thoughts. Results today were crap. There's no doubt about it. Results today are crap. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the final slide just like that. However, there are pathfinder elements that are indicative of alteration. These are always often necessary to help vectors towards the centre of a deposit. We have an intrusion-related gold deposit, which shows pretty much the telltale signs of alteration that we would expect to see, and we do see at other deposits worldwide. I will expand on that in a future presentation. I've tried to reiterate that one set of bad results does not incriminate a company, and that this, the majority of the market cap is based on Havieron, and the rant I've just done, I believe it's an overreaction in the market. Some people might not think so, in which case by selling you've cut your losses, and well done. Charts have just made major demand at 24 to 25p zone. So really, if you're in an average price kind of in and around 25 to 27p, it's probable that you would maybe see a maximum downside of like 10%. So it's probably worth holding. If you've been in since sub 10p, then you're still in major profits. You're still nearly 3 times. Some people have been in since 2p or even under that. They're probably not worried about this dip. They're in a different position. You've got to assess based on your own risk tolerance, what your average price is, the knowledge you have about the company using my presentations, Paddy's research, and anything else you can get your hands on. Is the company still worth the price it's currently at? And in my view, this is undervalued for Havieron based on the broker note alone, and we've still got more and more drilling to come from this area and indeed from Patterson Range East. It's turned into quite a ranty video. I will do a video going into the geology, geophysics, etc. of Scallywag. I can't promise when that'll be. I'm aiming to get it out definitely within 2 weeks, hopefully by next week. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading and putting together some figures, data, blah, blah, blah. It just takes time. But just in terms of what I've read so far, this is just bonus content. There is a deposit in Canada, which is the largest gold deposit in Canada, called the Malartic District. And the alteration that we are seeing from these results is quite similar to the alteration you find in the alteration zone around the major mine that is in that district. The rocks, the metamorphic rocks that are sort of the host rock there are, kind of similar, and indeed the actual underlying craton to Canada there is quite often seen as a comparison to the underlying cratons of Australia. So there's a lot of similarities there that I'm going to be exploring, as well as some general observations we see in intrusion-related gold deposits. But until that, I will leave the video here. Obviously, leave a comment if you want. I'm going to leave this up for about a week, and then I'm going to take it down. Okay? See you later.